Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches English Language. This video is to help you prepare for the Cambridge International English Language Paper 1, which is happening in a matter of days. I've got all sorts of videos in my playlist that takes you through question by question, and there's a good walk and talk through an entire paper 1 as well that will help you out with your revision. But what I thought would be great is just to give you a little bit of last minute advice, but based on what the examiners have said. So what I've done is I've pulled out the kind of main advice that they've put in their examiner's report from last year, and I'm just going to take you through what they say the best things to do are for every single question in paper 1. So it's a great idea to look at this first and then maybe go and have a look at another paper, or look at this first and then maybe watch my walk and talk through so you can see it all happening live in front of you. I will just say quickly before we get going, I just want to wish you all a massive good luck. You're going to be absolutely golden. I completely and utterly believe in you. You'll be fine. But let's get you feeling confident, and so let's get started. Okay, so let's start with question 1A to E. These are our comprehension questions. Now, the most obvious one that the exam board has started off with, make sure that you're writing on the right area, paragraph references. They give you clear indicators of where you're going to find those answers, and they are chronological as you go through the questions. Make sure that you read the command words of the question and read thoroughly, because sometimes it's very easy to misunderstand exactly what type of detail they're asking you to look for. When you're doing explanations, don't be too long, and make sure that, again, you're focused in on those key details. There are certain questions that ask you to use your own language. Make sure you do that. Okay, don't just repeat the language of the text. So that's 1E in particular, and also 1B, where they give you those little phrases. So interpret and use details in the text carefully to answer each of the comprehension questions. That basically means that sometimes the answer might not be straightforward. You might have to make an inference based on the information they've given you. For example, if they ask you about the benefits of using something, but all they've seemed to have listed are the negatives associated with the other product, then you might have to sort of put them in reverse, if that makes sense. Be as clear as you can be, and make sure that you're working with the information in the context that it's meant, so that you don't accidentally change meanings. And also, I realise that I don't think this one is actually on their exam guidance, but check how many marks are being allocated. So for example, the question 1B, where you've got those little phrases to translate, it's worth 2 marks. There'll be a good two important words in each phrase, so make sure that you are explaining each one in order to get both marks. Okay, so 2 marks, 2 things, 3 marks, 3 things. They also make the point that even though you're not going to get marks for spelling and punctuation, you've got to make sure that what you're saying is written concisely and precisely, so that they know what you mean. You don't want to lose a mark by not making sense. Okay, biggie, 1F. Now, what you'll notice about 1F is actually it's all the same skills that we're using in 1A to 1E, but just in a longer format. So, first thing you're going to do, you've read the text, you're going to read the question again, and then you're going to go back through the text and identify the ideas that you think potentially are relevant for you. So that might mean, for example, popping an underline or a highlight through them. And then they certainly suggest that you plan and reflect on the ideas that you're going to use ahead of time. That means don't just stare at your underlined or highlighted sheet. Make a little list, make a little table, especially if they ask you to look for 2 things. So if you get like pros and cons, create a little table so that you can pop all the ideas in, and that's then going to help you organize it and sense check that. That basically means, do you fully understand exactly what they mean before you use them? be careful. Sometimes they might, they might reiterate the same point, and if you just say it twice, you're not going to get 2 marks. So in those cases, you might want to think about an umbrella point. So if it says a couple of times in the text that, I don't know, the crossing was dangerous, if you say it twice, that's not 2 marks. Make sure you organise your work carefully, okay? Sequence it, link ideas together. That means using connectives. In addition, also, moreover, and make sure that you're using a sensible structure. It's not enough just to write it in the order that they were presented in the text. That's how you're going to end up with accidental repetition. Be informative, obviously, be as accurate as you can, avoiding errors, both in terms of spelling and punctuation, but also ones that are going to have an impact on your meaning. Remember that there are 5 marks for the quality of your writing. And one of the things that they said, which I quite enjoyed, I thought this was a good way of putting it, is explain your ideas in a way that someone who had not read the text themselves would understand. Make sure you check your work, but also check that you've included everything that's on your plan. Tick them off as you go, so that you know that you've got those 10-ish points. And then once you're done, draw a line through your planning. Remember that it is 10 marks for content, so I would be aiming to find 10 to 12 things. And then again, you're not going to want to waste time counting every single word, but try and keep to that 120 words. You want to be concise. If you go loads over, they're not going to necessarily give you the marks, when you're 200 words down. Okay, 2A, 2C. So now we're on our third text. Hurrah, we're on text C. Now, 2A is the one where they give you a statement with a little bit underlined, and you've got to find the precise words or phrase in the text that means the underlined example. So you've got to be precise. If you put in the whole sentence and sort of ignore the I don't know, the word or phrase it is that means the underlined, you're not going to get that mark, because you're going to put far too much in. They also said not to waste time by copying out the whole sentence and then just underlining the bit that you mean. If the phrase is sumptuous breakfast, write down sumptuous breakfast. That's it. 2B is kind of like the same task, but it's in reverse. So you're the one that is offering an explanation of 3 words within a couple of sentences. So they've mentioned 2 ways that people do it. Some people will just like choose a word or phrase that precisely means the word that they've given you. So for example, interruption, you might say disruption, done. But they said it's also fine if you want to write a longer explanation. So if you couldn't think of a synonym for the word that they've given you, then yeah, write a sentence that explains its overall meaning. But what you shouldn't do is just whack down as many words as you can and hope that you get the right one somewhere in amongst it. Okay, they're not going to give you marks for that. The other thing to be aware of with 2B is just make sure that you're looking at the word in its context. Okay, make sure that it still means the same thing as the writer intended it. There's normally one in there that has a different meaning outside of context. Now, 2C is a sneaky one, and a lot of people lose marks on this. So one of the things that the exam board have said specifically is just make sure that you really are focusing on just one example taken from the extract. They've said that it's okay if you identify it by underlining it or by popping it down as a subheading. Personally, my preference is to put it down as a subheading so that it is very, very clear that that's the example that you've selected. It's worth 3 marks, so you need to say 3 distinct points in relation to your chosen example. And what you're aiming to do here is to explain it in 3 levels. It's not a PEA paragraph, yeah? So you might, for example, start with an explanation of the meaning of the example in the context that it's in, and then you're going to kind of give a more detailed explanation about what that meaning suggests. But try and very clearly write 3 distinct points. Almost think to yourself, 3 distinct sentences. Okay, 2D, 15 marks, the only part of the entire Cambridge International GCSE English language exam that deals with like proper close language analysis. So first of all, you must make sure that you have 3 examples from each of the paragraphs that they've specified, which means that you're looking at 6 in total. They will cut your marks if you don't have all 6. So please make sure that you do that. You don't have to offer an overview. You know, I've seen some samples where people write like a paragraph giving an overview of the entire paragraph before they've even got started. The only reason you might offer an overview is if there is a pattern between the 3 choices that you have made, and it actually adds to the meaning and to your analysis of it to offer that overview. So you can literally go, the phrase such and such means dish, dish, dish. Okay, avoid empty comments. The writer helps us to imagine the scene. Yeah, this creates a picture in the reader's mind. This is effective because it engages the reader because they can see it more clearly. All of that is nonsense. You've got to be saying how your chosen example creates that image. Okay, it's all about the how. Do think about the meanings and the connotations of your keywords separately, and then how they work together for a little bit of added bonus. And if you're, I thought this was really helpful of the exam board. If you're unsure how to explain the effect, start by explaining the precise meaning in context of the paragraph. And that tells you something about the choices that you're making. If you pick a 4-word phrase and you think to yourself, well, there's an image in that, but you don't know what one of the keywords means, it's going to be very difficult for you to do this job. So make sure that you are selecting things that you feel confident with, both in imagery, but also in word meaning. And then when you're looking at images, think connotations and associations. So what does this make us think of? What do we associate with that word? What do we associate with that image to help you explain what the writer was trying to convey? And as always, allow time to edit your answers. Make sure that you read it through, check it carefully, look at your explanations. Are they precise enough? Can you add anything further? I thought this was a really useful way of summing it up down here. They said the most successful answers were often able to talk their reader through their understanding of words within relevant choices, considering different possibilities of meaning, associations and connotations ahead of arriving at an understanding of how and why these particular words might have been used by the writer in this context. They're basically saying you can be formulaic, you can kind of work your way through and then come to a kind of conclusion. And so I've included these sentence starters that might be of use to you. So the phrase such and such, this is where you would put your actual phrase in, means. Give a literal explanation of what it means. And then use one of these kinds of sentences. It makes the reader imagine such and such because, or it creates an image of such and such to make the reader think of blah, 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 blah. Or you could actually put an adjective in there. It creates a particularly playful image. It creates a very exciting image of someone exploring new territories. But do remember to make reference to image and imagery, but be specific. And then think about specific word choices. The adjective or verb or adverb or noun, blah, is effective because it suggests, comment on effect, or has connotations of such and such, which will make the reader imagine such and such. Little by the by, if you don't know whether it's an adjective, a verb, an adverb or a noun, say word, because that can't be wrong. But if you feel confident, then yeah, whack it in. Okay, question 3 is the biggie. This is obviously the 25 marker where you are finding information and then rewriting it for a particular audience and purpose and in a particular format. So first things first, actually use TextC. This is not about coming up with your own ideas. You've got to make sure that you're using the information based on the bullet points they've given you. And when you're writing it, be aware of audience and purpose. Like I said before, you know, you're going to write it very differently if you're writing, for example, a letter to your friend versus a letter to your head teacher. A diary entry is going to sound very different to a speech that you are giving to parents and teachers. So have that constantly in your mind. And for that reason, decide on a voice and a style and keep to it all the way through. Don't invent info. I was surprised that the examiners pointed out that some candidates that were least successful just made stuff up. You're getting 15 marks for how well you gather the information from the text. Do give equal attention to each of the 3 bullet points. Make sure that you cover all aspects of each bullet point, because sometimes there can be up to 2 or 3 elements to the bullet point. So make sure that you're getting all of them and think about how you're going to order it. Personally, if the text lends itself, and it normally does, I actually think it's very sensible to organise your paragraphs around the bullet points, simply because you're making it easier for your examiner to see you hitting them. Do you know what I mean? I want to see an examiner just being like, oh yeah, A1, 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 new paragraph, A2, A2, A2. You see what I mean? But you're not limited to that. Because, for example, if some of the ideas were linked together, you might want to kind of combine that. Either way, make sure you have a real plan and you know where you're going. Best thing for me, just like the summary, find the information, label it, bullet point 1, 2, and 3, pop it in a little table so that you can then reflect on it and then think to yourself, okay, what's the most sensible order from here? Own words as far as you can, you know, please don't copy directly from the text, you won't get the marks. And here is one of the things that they talk about. It's this idea about development. They want to see a development. That doesn't mean new information. That means if you were writing from the perspective of a person who had a really challenging rock climb and you had to comment from their perspective about a moment where they lost their grip, for example, then the development might be that they were frightened for their life. Do you know what I mean? It's still within the remit of the bullet points, okay? So just develop, but don't go outside of the text. And as always, leave sufficient time to edit and correct your response. I would say you want to actually proofread every paragraph you write to make sure that your brain is picking up on mistakes as you go. That's it from me. That was a little bit of a whirlwind. That was based entirely on the examiner's report from 2024 in June. If you want more guidance and more practical examples, because I'm aware this has just been me chatting, if you want to actually see it in action, go and have a look on my playlist where I have broken down question by question, and there's also a complete walk and talk through the paper as well. That's it from me. Oh my goodness, massive good luck to everyone sitting the Cambridge English Language exam this Thursday. Oh, it's just in a matter of days. You'll be absolutely golden. Just take your time, take a deep breath, keep to your timings, and you'll be fine. That's it. Thank you so much and happy revising.